Hi there, thanks for joining me for another video. My name is Erin Eno and we are already into the month of November, which means Remembrance Day is just around the corner, so I thought this would be the perfect time to paint a nice bright red poppy. So grab your paints and let's get started. So before we start, I'll quickly run through my supplies. Today I'm using Arches cold pressed watercolor paper. It's 140 pound, 100% cotton. I have my Van Gogh paints in my palette, a jar of water, paper towel, a pencil, and my kneaded eraser. And for brushes, I've got my Princeton snap in a size 12 round and a size 2 round. And I also have a Curry's brand, which is an art store near me. I've got one of their brushes in a size 6 round. So we'll just put the brushes aside and we'll sketch out our poppy. So I'm going to put the center right here, just as my base point, okay? And then coming off of that is this petal that kind of scoops from the center. We're kind of looking at it from the underneath, if that makes sense. And it kind of curls around. And then I've come out too far there. Kind of like that. Okay, and the center is way off base now. So I'm going to fix that. Okay, so the center is about here. Okay, and then coming off of that petal, we have this big petal here. And I can make the shape more jagged when I'm actually painting it. But if you can imagine, it's kind of opening up like a clamshell, which makes me feel like this one is just a little too deep. There. That's a little better. Then we'll do a petal. It's coming off of there. Actually, that's not right. I'm having a hard time drawing today. There we go. And petal coming off of here. And this one's got a big kind of crease in it. So just like that, this one's a little wonky. There. That's a little better. Make the center a little smaller now. I'm not having a good time drawing today. Not having much luck. Okay, and then we'll do the stem. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of a curve. Okay. Now, I want to add a couple of buds to this picture as well. So just going to do a stem hanging over and a bud here. And then another one coming back from behind and kind of curling into itself. Just like so. Okay, so now our poppy is drawn out and now we can start to paint. Actually, before we start to paint, I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and just lighten these pencil lines a bit. There you go. Now we're ready to paint. Okay, so for the red, I'm just going to use carmine with a bit of cadmium red in it. The cadmium red is kind of orange, so it just makes this red a little more realistic looking. More of a poppy color. So I'm going to just dip my brush in my water jar and drag it along the edge to get most of the pigment off. And I'm just going to sorry, that's too red. Not orange enough. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so I'm just going to start with this petal. And ideally I'd like to use a smaller brush, but this is the best brush I have tip-wise, like it's got a nice point on it, and it's stiff enough that I can just kind of push this in and out to get that kind of crepe papery edge to it. Okay. So once that's down, I'm just going to take my stronger pigment and just tap in to give it some shape here. And we can go in and fine tune this later. Okay, because this petal will have a bit of a highlight on that top edge. Okay, now I'm going to do this petal here, and I know they're touching, but I'm just going to leave a little bit of white space because we can fill that white space in later with shadows, with shading and shadows, yeah. Okay, so I'm just kind of wiggling my brush to get that kind of crepe paper edge that I was mentioning. Okay. Whoops, went out a little far on that one. That's okay. It's okay. So here's where I'm just going to leave that kind of white edge. And I can come into the center a bit because that's going to be mainly almost black. So we can paint over the red for the center. Okay, so I'm just going to spread this around. Then I'm going to go in with more pigment. Get some more orange in there. Okay, and I'm just going to start tapping along this edge. I'm going to go in and tap some more in here. Give it some depth there. I do want to keep a highlighted edge on there. So I'm going to go in with my number 2 brush and just tap it off. Just tap off the excess water and just pick up a bit of a highlight here on this top edge of this petal, just like so. Okay, now I'm going to go in and do these 2 outer petals again with just a wash. maybe not that light. And just come close to that. I don't want them bleeding into each other, just and again, keep that kind of jagged edge. Just pick up some of that excess water, go back and get some deeper pigment and start tapping it in. Now this one has a bit of a highlight on this edge, so I don't want to put this deeper pigment everywhere. Okay, just want to kind of control it a bit. Just like that. Then we have one more petal to do. So I'm going to just come up to this edge first. Leaving a little bit of white just so I can keep those petals distinguished from each other for when I do the shading. And the white will get filled in by the shading. Okay, so again, just kind of wiggling my brush to get that kind of crepey edge to the petal. Now that's a little wet. I'm just going to pick up some of that excess water there. And then I'm going to go back to that dark pigment and just tap it in. Okay, and again, just maybe starting some of those crepey lines just with the tip of my brush. Okay, so that's, whoops, did not mean to do that. I'm going to let that dry a bit, and while that's drying, I'm going to go in and do the stem and the buds. So I'm just going to take some sap green, which I am almost out of in my palette here. I really should have filled that before I started this. I'm going to add a little bit of carmine just to make it not so bright a green. Okay. And I'm going to I'll do the buds first because the flower's so pretty wet. So like so. Again, turn your paper if you have to. Okay, so we're just quickly doing some buds. And I will just tap in a little pigment along the edges, or the one edge rather. Okay. And we'll do this stem here. I'm going to be careful when I get up to this flower. I don't want it to bleed. And then it's going to come out here. And then we'll do the bud. You can tap in some extra pigment along the stem of the buds just to give them some shape. Okay. Tap in here, and now we'll do the stem to the poppy. Again, I have to be careful because it's still a little wet. So there you go. Now I think what I'll do is I'll also just clean off my brush and pick up a little bit of highlight on these buds. Just like that. Just kind of soften that up. Okay, so now I'm going to go and start shading our poppy. So I'm going to use this red that we have, and I'm going to create a darker shade by just adding a little bit of green, because adding colors opposite to each other on the color wheel will make a brown. So this way we get a, like kind of a nice reddish shadow color instead of just going in with black. And I'm going to add shading under here. And that did bleed in a little more than I wanted, so I'm just gonna pick that up there. Then I'm gonna rinse my brush off, dry it off my paper towel, and just blend this out. Just soften it up a bit. So when you do that, just keep wiping it on your paper towel. And you can just soften that right up. Okay, so we're just kind of glazing at this point. Here again, adding the shadow to separate those two petals. And this one kind of has some lines. Well, they all have lines on, so we're going to just draw out some lines like so, and we can go in and soften those up too. So just blending it out with a damp brush, like so. Just gives the petals a little bit of texture, so they're not flat and uninteresting. I could even darken that up a little bit more. And make it dark here to separate these two petals. And add some depth, add some shadow in here. Whoops. Okay, so we're just separating the petals with these shadows basically. And then we can even just bring this out just with the tip of our brush and start creating some of those lines from the wrinkly petals. And we will soften those up as well. Put a little more over here. Okay, so I'm just going to blend them out now, just with my damp brush. Blending the shadow out and the lines. Just like that. And on this guy, we're just going to go up along the top. That might be too much water, but I just want to get that highlighted edge kind of back. And then we can bring some lines down here, just like that. Okay, so we want to maintain that cup shape. So the lines are going to come down this way, there, and from the other side down. So from top right to bottom left, top left to bottom right. Okay, and again, we'll blend those out just to soften them. Okay, we'll put a little bit of shading under here, a little bit more. And now we can add some lines to this guy. I'm just going to shade all along the top, make a little bit more of it. I'm running out of the shadow color. There we go. And then this one, I'm just going to put it all along the edge. And then the lines are kind of scooping down this way from that side. And then down from the center, almost straight. And then when you get to the right, you're going to curve them the other way. So you're kind of defining that kind of bowl shape, you know, the kind of cup shape. And then again, I'm going to soften them up with a clean, damp brush. I could add a little more red there. Okay, so now I'm going to actually dry this because I don't want to wait too long. Actually, you know what? No, I lied. I'm going to go back in and add a little bit more shadow, or a little deeper of a shadow, just in a couple spots. I'm just going to actually, you know what? I'll take some sepia, put that in there. That'll darken it up. Just in these really deep areas here, and a little bit here, just to make the petals pop a little bit more. Just felt like the shadows were just lacking a little bit. Maybe I've overdone it now, I don't know. It's too late now. I'm just going to soften that up. Like so. Okay, and now I'm going to dry it so I can go in and do the center. Okay, so now that that's dry, before I do the center, I'm just going to go in with my number 2 brush and a darker shade of this green that we did for the stems. And I'm just going to kind of just run up one side of the stem just to give it some dimension. It was looking a little flat. You even add a little bit more to the bud as well. So now I'm going to go in with my number 6 brush So I'm going to just take straight sepia basically and just run it along the petal edge here. I'm going to turn this so I have a better angle. And I'm going to give it that kind of crepey edge again, because that is in front of the center, if that makes sense. So that petal is going to form the shape. Then I'm just going to come and round this out and just kind of dabbity dab. Okay, now I'm going to clean off my brush and just kind of tap now, because I don't want it all flat, one straight kind of color. I want it to have some highlight. So just to make sure that some areas are dark enough, I'm going to go in with the black, because the sepia will dry a little lighter. Okay, so I just want some highlights on it, not a lot. Now I'm wondering if this isn't looking orange enough, and I'm just going to see if I can just get, I'm going to clean this out of my palette first. And I'm just going to get some of that straight cadmium red, which is more orange really. And I'm just going to see if I can just put a light wash of it over everything without disturbing it too much, just to make it more of a poppy color. And I think that's good. Actually, that accentuated that highlight a little better, so that's not a bad thing. So there is your finished poppy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you found it helpful. And if you want to see more beginner-friendly tutorials, please be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to know when I have new videos out. Also, if you're on Instagram and you try any of my tutorials, please be sure to share and tag me so I can have a look. That's it for today, guys. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.